My name is Maria Garcia. I'm the author of the book We Made San Diego. This is my second book, and the purpose of this book was to tell about our history in San Diego because there's so much history and we're not in the history books. I'm very proud of my book because it informs us about the many contributions Latinos, Mexican Americans, Chicanos have made to San Diego. Many of these contributions are not found in history books or even known by our own community. Bea Zamora and Mario Aguilar are a husband and wife team who are very well known in the Chicano community. Bea was born in San Diego and raised in Los Angeles, and Mario was born in Mexico and raised in San Diego. As you listen to this podcast, you will learn how much they both value education and how they have passed this value not only to their own children, but to the many students whose lives they have touched. Even though they are retired, they have not slowed down. In addition to entertaining with danza, these two bridge builders share their life story and contributions. Please listen and enjoy their story. You just saw some pictures of Mario and Bea, and I'd like them to talk about what they do, their youth. We'll start way back when and work our way up to what you're doing now. Thank you both very much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, no. Who's going to go first and tell us?
I'll start off with, in 1972, when I graduated from high school, I was the first president of Mecha at Hoover High School. And I was really excited about being proud of who we are, and especially with all the racism that we encountered. It was important for us to, first of all, be proud of who we are, and second of all, do something with it. So when I went to San Diego State, I was, for the first time, met other Chicanos who were in college, and many of the classes I took, I was the only Chicano in them. So it was really a mind-blowing experience, because I felt that, we were supposed to become like everybody else and destroy what we brought from our homes. And so it was at that time that I went to Mexico as part of a Chicano theater organization called TENAS, Teatros de Aztlán, Teatros Organizados en Aztlán. And a lot of Chicano groups from all over the United States went, as well as a lot of groups from Latin America. And so for the first time, number one, we saw ourselves as, we're not Chicanos just stuck in the U.S., but we're Chicanos part of this big Latino. This is where the word Latino makes sense, not here. But when I came back from Mexico, I was so excited to have seen danzantes there. And we performed at Teotihuacan and at Tajín. And I was so excited, but I was also very saddened that being so far away, where I was never going to learn danza. And then I show up in Tijuana singing, took my friend to go buy Christmas presents for him and his wife. And we see this Aztec dance group. And I thought, oh my God, they were dancing in an unfinished parking garage. And I didn't have much money to give them, but I gave donations. And I went home thinking, oh my God, this is even worse. They're in Tijuana, but I have no way of getting a hold of them. And then my friend, Juan Felipe Herrera, who I was with him in the Servidores of Árbol de la Vida music group. He said, come over, I want you to meet some people. And I went, and the living room was dark, pitch black. And he said, come on in. And I could see vaguely the silhouette of 6 little heads on a sofa like this. And he goes, ¿por qué están en la luz, en lo oscuro? And he turned on the lights. And there they were. They all had this terrified look, like, I don't know what's going to happen. But that's when I met Florencio. And Florencio was a man who said, why did you go to the Hopis and the Lagunas and the Shumish and the Comanches to learn their traditions when you have your own traditions in Mexico. You just don't know them because you speak English and you're afraid to go down there, or it's easier to get on the 10 freeway here and go east as opposed to go on a bus with chickens and guajolotes to a pueblo. And so 1974 was the beginning of the danza tradition. And I met Bea when I was dancing with Florencio at Cal State Fullerton. We danced. And then many years later, it turns out that she was there when we were dancing. So it was, as I say, it was prophesized.
Okay, but you give your side of the story now.
Yeah, and for me, I was born in San Diego, raised in East Los Angeles County, and my parents, were on my dad's side. We've always been from the United States. They're from New Mexico and Arizona, and so my dad's side of the family, we always believe we didn't come to the United States. The United States came to us. On my mom's side of the family, my grandmother came over during the Mexican Revolution. She was about 14 and she already had a baby. And she came as a mail order bride, quite frankly, because my grandfather was a miner in one of the mining towns in Arizona, which, Chicanos have a long history of contributing to that industry. And they made their life in Arizona. So growing up in Los Angeles as a Chicana, in those days, the word Chicana didn't really exist for us in our world. I was, Mexican American. But really the only thing I knew about my culture was the food we ate. And once in a while, maybe we went to a, celebration where there was mariachi. And that was kind of it. And then when I got to college, I went to college. Quite frankly, I went to college because my father had passed away when I was 16, and I started to receive Social Security benefits, death benefits, and veterans benefits because my dad was a veteran of World War II. And my mom said, "Oh, well, you got to go to college because we're going to keep this money coming into the household." And I had no clue what college was. And I went to community college, which is why I love community colleges, because they do open the doors to level the playing field for people who really don't have that history of education in their lives. And so in high school, that was like, I graduated like Mario in 1972. And so we were just coming out of Vietnam War. We were having all the social protests. The kids in the heart of East LA were having the high school walkouts. The moratorium happened. All of those things were happening as I was starting to form really my identity. And I also got involved with organization. The organization I first got involved with was called United Mexican American Students, UMAS. And then that later became MECHA. But I had grown up with this idea that somewhere in my history, I had Native American heritage because my dad always made nicknames for us. And one of my many nicknames, I won't tell you all of them, but one of my many nicknames was Apache. And so I always wanted to know, what does Apache mean? And why did he call me that? And in those days, he said my eyes were very black, and that's why he called me Apache. But I found out that my grandmother had some Apache heritage from New Mexico. So I always wanted to know more about that. And all I could ever see about Native Americans was black and white TV and John Wayne killing off the Indians, and they were always the bad guys. So when I get to college and I start to take some Chicano studies classes, but then it was called Mexican American Studies, I started to realize that we had some kind of a history to be proud of. And I think that's why writing children's books has become important to me, because I think that too many times we don't know anything about our past. We're not included in the history books. If anything, there's a paragraph about Cesar Chavez, and that's about it. And we have a rich heritage, not only in Mexico, but our contributions to this country. And so I started to explore that a little bit. By the time I transferred to Cal State University Fullerton, we're having a culture day one day. And that's when I see the danza for the first time in my life. I'd never seen anything like it. And I was like, oh my God, what is this thing? What is this phenomenon? So I took off my apron and ran over and started to watch these dancers dance. And they formed a circle and they danced, and they didn't have a microphone, so they didn't really talk with us. They just danced. And I felt like I was seeing my history reveal itself for the first time in my life. And I was like, wow, this is my connection. And I sat there with chills up and down my spine, and I started crying, and I didn't know what was going on, but I was very moved by that experience. They finished dancing and they left the arena. And then I finished, college a couple years later and was trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do now? I have a bachelor's degree. I had done a little stint in an elementary school classroom, and I realized I didn't want to become a teacher in elementary school because I didn't want to deal with that many kids at one time. And so one of my professors said, well, why don't you think about going to grad school? And that was just the scariest thing on earth for me because I didn't understand how I had even gotten a bachelor's degree, let alone a master's. So anyways, long story short, I enter a master's program at San Diego State University, which gave me an opportunity as a young Chicana to actually move out of my mother's home and not be married. And I came to San Diego. I didn't know anybody, but I wanted to come back to the place where I was born. And that's when I meet Mario, and he takes me to see his dance. And I realize that that's the same dance I had seen at Cal State Fullerton. And so I told him about my experience, and he said, I was dancing in that circle. I'm like, oh my God, I guess we were supposed to meet. So that was my beginnings of the danza.
And I remember being there because somebody stole my wallet. So
I didn't do it.
So I remember being a dancer at Cal State Fullerton, and it was that day.
So you come back and you actually meet. Where does that go to dancing? You could have gone to a movie.
Well, we were both very intrigued and engaged with Chicanismo and the Chicano movement, which, by the way, the Chicano movement is not over. It's still ongoing. And so I started to, I remember the first time I went with some of the other grad students to see Chicano Park and walk onto that land. And that was 1979. And that was my first time of really learning about Chicano Park and seeing it. And from the minute I walked onto that land, I felt this vibration, and I'm like, okay, this is home. This is where I need to be. And that's where his group would practice. There's a lot of dance groups now in the region, but really the Toltecas in Aztlán, which was Mario's first group, and then our group, Danza Mexica, were the original danzantes here in San Diego. And so Chicano Park was a home. And that's where I would see them dance. So I would go and I would watch them dance. And I was too shy to dance myself. I used to be a very shy person, although some people don't believe that.
They'll never believe it.
But after watching him dance for a while, then we get married in 1980. And I thought, well, everybody would always invite me to dance. And one of the original dancers in that group was Josie Talamantes. And she'd always say, come up, get up and dance, and I'd say, no. Then I realized that I was just going to be sitting by the sidelines the rest of my life if I didn't get up and dance. So it's important to take risks and try new things, right? So that's when I started dancing.
Okay, so because you told me, or you told us how you felt about going to Chicano Park. I know you wrote a book about Chicano Park. Share how that got to be. I know that's years later, and I do want to go back to your dancing, but tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, actually, probably about 30 years ago, I wrote a children's story about Chicano Park. And, in those days it was on a typewriter, and I didn't ever do anything with it. I just threw it in a drawer and went on with my life. Fast forward 40 years, and then I retire from my role in the community colleges where I was an educator. We're getting ready to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Chicano Park in 2020. And I thought, you know what? We need that book. We need that book because every time I'm at the park, somebody comes up to me and asks me, oh, where did this park come from? What they think that the city and the government was so lovely that they just gave us this beautiful park. And then I was always educating folks in the park. No, we fought for this park. This park came out of a social justice movement. And so I decided to write a book about Chicano Park, and it's called The Spirit of Chicano Park, El Espíritu del Parque Chicano. And on the front cover, it has a picture of the kiosco, which is, to me, the heart of Chicano Park. And it's the place where many things began: celebrations, ceremonies, community protests. All of those are important elements of our community. And so I started to research it. Even though I knew the history of Chicano Park, I thought I need to get it from the actual people who were there. So I conducted hours and hours of interviews of folks that were involved with the park in the beginning or have contributed to the park throughout the years. The book has won 6 book awards, and it's done quite well. It's bilingual, and in the back it has showcases of various leaders in the community. But what I thought was really important about the book is that our children need to know a couple of things. They need to know, one, that they matter, that they have a history, and that they have made large contributions, not just to the United States, but to this continent. We are of this land, of the Americas. The other thing they need to know is that they have a voice, and they need to find that voice, and they need to take action, because that's what the people did who took over Chicano Park in 1970. And, the community was going through devastation with the building of Interstate 5 freeway and the Coronado Bridge. And you were there.
Yeah.
And the people wanted a park. They wanted a park for their kids, and they had to fight for it because the city and the state promised them a park and then pulled the rug out under their feet and said, no, we're going to build a highway patrol substation. And so the community gathered for 12 days and 12 nights, and they camped out, they held hands, and they stopped the bulldozers from working. And they made that park. They started to bring their shovels, their picks, like Chunky says in the song. They started to plant plants, and they started to develop what we call self-determination. They were going to take over that park and make a beautiful green space for the community. And that park now is 54 years old. So that's really why I put the book out.
Okay, but Mario, I'd like to know how you guys both got into dancing. She's still saying no, and you're saying yes. So,
well, my parents, my dad's a 2nd grade graduate from Hidalgo, and my mom is a 7th grade graduate from Mexico City. And so for them, even though they didn't have much of an education, they were bien educados. So they were always telling me about my culture, about my history. They remembered the old, Mexican high school history classes, because they told me about this. And so when we would go to Mexico, maybe once every 6 years, we would go to the pyramids, we go to the Museo de Antropología. And so it was always very, very much a part of my daily lifestyle to be immersed in Mexican culture, Mexican tradition, and of course, Mexican novelas, because that's what my parents watched religiously. They still do. And so when I went to Mexico in 1974 as part of the Servidores del Árbol de la Vida with Alurista and Juan Felipe Herrera, we performed there, and I saw for the first time Danza Azteca, Andres Segura's group. She actually danced at the place where the Noche Triste happened, Upotla. And I was just amazed to see this dance, and it just felt like it was capturing me. And when we danced at the pyramids later on that day in the sun and the heat, and then as the sun went down, watching the shades go down through the pyramids, it was amazing to feel that I am just a collection of links that go back thousands of years and go forward thousands of years, hopefully. But I'm right here, and here's my ancestors, here's my descendants. And my job that day was to, like they say, recopilar, I don't know what the word is in English, to gather intelligence so that I could share it with the Chicanos that have never come down here or who never will, because there's a lot of Chicanos that are danzantes Aztecas now who are undocumented and they can't go back to Mexico for their ceremony, so they've recreated them here. So within the past, I thought from 1974 to 1980, danza was kind of like, there was like 4 groups in the whole United States. 1990 to 2000, now there's more. 2000 to now, it's gone thousands of danzantes. And it's because the people from Mexico who can't go back, and Trump's not going to be able to take them back because they're going to be stronger than him. They are doing the tradition as they've known it, very Catholic, very much centered on the saints and all that. And we Chicanos are doing it, the danza, the same thing, but with a Native American point of view. So the saints aren't as important as the tradition of the flowers and the incense and all those symbolisms are very pre-Columbian, and we don't know that. So that's been my my cause, I guess, for the past 50 years, is to kind of help people who will never go back to Mexico to understand these things and bring it over here. Because I know, like, one of my friends used to dance with us, and now he makes T-shirts with old LP albums on the front. So, like, you get like Cuco Sanchez, 1958, really cool. And it's called 45 RPM is his thing.
But tell the story about when you're at the Centro and you first start to dance.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is what we've been fighting. Like today, everybody comes from Mexico and sees the dance and says, oh my God, they love you guys. And there's thousands of you. But in 1974, there was 6 of us in the whole United States. And I was one of those 6. And I was the only Chicano. The other guys were from Mexico. And there's a picture still, I think it's in the thing there, of the 6 of us with Florencio in the middle. And when we were having classes, my friends from the barrio, we used to play jazz and, supposedly our version of Carlos Santana. And they would say, oh, what are you doing out there? Maricones, jotos, ah. And I say, well, this is danza azteca. I try to teach them even then. Cállate mentiroso. Tú no eres indio, eres mexicano. It's like, what? And it's like, that Mexicano comes from Mexica, which is an indigenous word. And they were like, cállate, bola de jotos, These were my friends. And there was it was just carrilla. There was no trying to understand or be proud or nothing. But then over the years, as they see day in, day out, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, practices at the park, dancing at Chicano Park every year. I mean, we just, little by little, people began to say, oh, tú eres de los Aztecas, yeah. Órale, que esto, que el otro, And people began to see, and I saw the difference in the murals. Before, it was Zapata with this thing here, and Pancho Villa and Las Adelitas, and all of a sudden, little by little, Azteca images or Native American images started popping up. And now you look at all the murals throughout San Diego County, and it's all imagery that comes from Native American traditions of Mexico.
You carry a very important title. Can you tell us how you got that title and what it is exactly?
No, well, the danza.
What is the title?
Well, I'm going to go into it. The danza is organized as a military organization because we fought against the Spanish, and the jefes from each village gathered their men and sometimes their women to go fight. So they were the capitanes in charge of their little group, the tribe. And then all of the capitanes, in any organization, you have to have a guy at the top to blame or to take the credit. And so that is the Capitan General. So you're above all the capitanes. And in Mexico, there were maybe like 5 or 6, maybe 10 capitanes throughout the centuries in Mexico City, Guadalajara, Querétaro, Guanajuato, Hidalgo, San Luis Potosí. And so when the danza came to the United States, we followed the same organization. That we are in military units. We have the Malinches, which hold the salmero, the incense. We have sargentos, the sergeants that keep the groups lined up. And we have this whole army kind of organization. And in 2016, some of the danzantes in San Diego said, we don't have our papers. And if the immigration ever takes us away, our kids will be stuck here by themselves and they won't know anything about danza. So we want you to be in charge of them so that they can learn if something happens. And so that would make me their general. And so we had a ceremony in 2016 and we put it out there to all the dancers in the United States who wants to come and give their recognition that I recognize your work for the past 45, 48 years at that time. And we recognize you as a general. So I got that recognition in 2017. There were a couple groups that, I don't believe in this and blah, blah. And then a couple of groups in Mexico because unfortunately there's some people who come here but to sell things, to charge for classes, to do things. And of course, once they realize that the danza is growing just as it has in Mexico, then their, what would you call it? Their monopoly is destroyed because now any danzante can come and bring stuff to sell here. And so there were some people who weren't happy with it. But all in all, has been a really profound and sacred honor to be given that by the dancers that know me. There's some dance jefes that come from Mexico and they say, well, you want to be a capitan? Well, it'll cost you this, that. They don't know the person. And the people that gave me the recognition that I've known since the 70s, 80s, 90s. So it's bringing the tradition as it is in Mexico to the U.S., which has been my dream that someday, as Florencio said, in every church, in every park, in every recreation center, in every school, there will be an Aztec dance group or a Mexican indigenous dance group. And we're seeing that today. And now there's matachines, there's, one of the guys that do the crazy thing, I can't remember, the chinelos, and then danzastecas. So voladores everywhere throughout the United States. There's people say, well, I used to do this, or my dad used to do this in Mexico. I'm going to do it here because it's my tradition. And that's what I want. So that worst comes to worst, they throw out all the jefes de danza to Mexico, which will never happen because we are glued to this land now. People can carry it on.
And his role as capitan for many, many years was basically leading the tradition, leading the group, but also learning constantly from Mexico and teaching many groups here in the United States the meaning of the danza, because you see the dance and you think that's it, but there's a whole spiritual level that has ceremony and discipline, self-discipline and other aspects. And so he taught that all of those years. And now he's been moved up to a general or general, which means he has, an elder status and he has that knowledge base. I'm a capitana. He calls me a generala. I'm a danzante, But I think what's really, really important about the danza in the United States is it's important to understand how, as he mentioned, it impacted our identity as a people, but also when we learn things, at least our group, when we learn things from jefes in Mexico, we capture them and we hold on to them. And then the jefe might come back 10 years later and say, oh, that's a beautiful dance. Where did you learn that? from you, because in Mexico, it's always evolving and changing. And here we hold on to tradition. And so there's many things that we do here that they no longer do in Mexico. And we're now, the American and Chicano danza groups are having an impact on how things are done in Mexico. And I'll give you one very simple example, which is when we used to go to Mexico way back in the 80s to dance, the women had a very minor role, as you might guess.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And it was true here too, and it still is true. But there are women leaders of dance groups here. The women take care of the smoke most of the time, although they don't have to be. And the smoke is the really the blessing and the purification, when we do our dances, what we're offering. Well, now when we go to Mexico, we see women having more prominent roles. Actually, one of our jefas who recently passed away, Rosita Maya, was also named a generala. And so that's pretty amazing for Mexico. And I do think what we've done here has had an impact, even though there are a lot of jefes in Mexico that they don't know what to make of us. And the reason is, in Mexico, when you dance, it's usually because it was your parents who danced, your grandparents, your tatarabuelos. And so you're carrying on this tradition from the family. And here, many times we're dancing because it's more of a political statement. It's a cultural and it's a spiritual practice. And so some of the jefes in Mexico say to us, what you guys do over there is really impressive because you don't have to do it. But we have to do it because it was our family tradition. And you don't have to, yet you choose to. So I think the danza here has had a profound impact in how that international exchange with Mexico.
Can I say something real quick?
I'm sorry?
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, of course.
I also wanted to say that another big difference is that in Mexico, the kids learn that you're going to have to carry on this tradition, and it's still church based, and you have to go ask the priest for permission. You have to do this. Here, we don't do that because we're not tied, like she said, that we're not tied to my great grandmother started this, and we're going to dance at the church. And like here, it's like now my grandson can say, I've been dancing because my grandparents taught me. So we're at the very beginning of what they've done in Mexico for 400, 500 years. But the difference is that here, because it's politically focused, not so much church, we impress upon our students to get education. So danza is a path. You follow the indigenous path, but you also have to, you don't live in 1492 and you don't live in Mexico. You live in 2025 San Diego. So you got to live in 2025. So we teach our people to live the duality of our paths. So our kids, we say, you're a fantastic dancer, but you can't make money from that. You need to go to school and get an education, whether it's college, whether it's technical, but we want our children to get an education. So that is a part that makes our group very, very different from actually any other group in the world, because we push education as much as we push your steps, because every step has a meaning. So when we turn to the left, it's a spiritual heart. When we turn to the right, when it's turn to the left, it's the physical heart. When you turn to the left, it's the spiritual heart. You say, well, spiritual, what are you talking about? Well, that's the duality of the indigenous worldview. And those are the things we talk about. And people say, oh, I'd love to hear that. Say, oh, you seem to have a good mind for medicine. Me, yeah, you should think about going to college and becoming a nurse or a medical thing. And we don't tell them doctor because they're, it's 12 years, but nurse practitioner. And 2 years later, they decide they want to go to something because now they're not afraid of college.
In our group, we have a medical doctor, we have a lawyer, we have all kinds of professional teachers. My son's a professor at San Diego State. PhDs. We have lots of master's degree level trained people who do community work.
So the value of education is certainly emphasized.
Yes.
You told us a story about kindness.
Yes.
Would you repeat that story? I think it's important for our audience to hear.
When I was in Veracruz in 2004, I went to study Nahuatl because I taught Nahuatl at San Diego State for about 5 years. And, the indigenous people are very poor, extremely poor. Their home has dirt floors. They have one light hanging from a wire, and they cook in a little outside kitchen that's just made out of bamboo. Very, very humble. And yeah, when we had the Chicome Xochitl ceremony, Chicome 7 Xochitl flower. So the 7 flowers are 7 little guys they make out of paper. And then they stuff them with different seeds like black corn, white corn, yellow corn, red corn, white beans, whatever they plant for that year. And then they cut out thousands of little people, like papel picado, but these are just little people. But every page is different from the other ones. There's thousands of different variations. And then in the ceremony, what they do is they take these chickens and turkeys and they cut off their heads, and the blood that splatters on the white paper to symbolize sacrifice. And so what they're doing is they're saying we're sacrificing ourselves for the food that's going to feed our village. And so I was just so amazed at the kindness that everybody showed each other. And there was no, I didn't see or feel anybody like showing off. And, like I'm better than you are or anything like that. And the musicians played for hours, like 10 hours a day. And they even asked me, do you want to play the violin? I go, sure. I try to play it. Okay. But what I got when I was talking to the man whose home we were in, I was saying, I feel that there's so much kindness here. And he says, well, we call it our ritual of kindness because we're trying to be kind to our neighbors, to our ancestors, and their altar has 3 levels. One is for today, the living people. One is for the people who are in heaven, and one who are buried in the ground. And all 3 of them are receiving offerings because it's kindness, And when I came back from Mexico and jumped into teaching now and jumped back into doing my dance classes, I thought I want to save that concept of dancing for rituals of kindness, because in this society, everything is, if you talk about Danza Azteca, it's warriors, it's bloodthirsty, it's this, it's that. I'm going to go out there with calaveras on my head and I'm going to go out there with my sword. It's all violence, but we forget that the kindness that was there after the wars, after this, after that, just a daily kindness, is still in our Mexican culture. People say, oh, Mexicans, they're so nice, they're so kind. They give you everything. That's the indigenous world. It's not the Spanish world. The Spanish world is dame. Give me that. The Spanish, the indigenous, no gusta, no quiere algo. Siéntese a comer. Those people have barely anything to eat.
I know.
They had and I'll end with this one. They had this desiccated heart, and they had it on the roof on top of a beam. And they said, would you like to have some of our honorable meat? And I said, sure. And then my friend from Florida State, he's Cubano or something. Well, no, he was from where Sofia went, Vanderbilt. He said, don't do it. It tastes nasty. I said, well, I only tasted it once in my life. And if it's nasty, pues ya estuvo. So they brought it out and they just unopened it. And they said, this is the heart of a bull that we sacrificed. And we save it all the year because it's an honorable piece and we want you to have some. And they told me all about the magic and all the stuff. So I sliced a piece off and I was like, oh, no me sé de Dios. And it tastes like cold liver. I was like, okay, well, I swallowed it whole. I was like, how? ¿Quieres más? Oh, no, I'm fine, thank you. Save it for the next honorable person.
But the the medicine man that was leading the ceremony, you didn't tell the
Oh,
story.
that story.
And I want to share it. I think I got it right. I wasn't there. But he was the one that would use scissors, and he would cut out these little paper doll images of people that represented people of the whole world that they were praying for. And he told him the story that his father had left him these scissors. And he said, my father left my brother on acres of land, and all I got was this pair of scissors. But my brother gambled and drank and lost all of the land, and I still have my scissors. And I go all over Mexico, all over Veracruz, and I do these ceremonies. And this is how I make my living, but this is also how I have my spiritual practice. So I thought that was just really beautiful. Did I get it right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're trying to teach us values in a different way.
Right.
People, see, these are your values, 1, 2, 3. You're doing it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about how you feel how you're doing it and the reception you get when you do this.
Well, I used to be a juvenile diversion counselor where they would send kids. This guy stole a 12-pack of beer. He goes to to juvenile for 6 months, or he goes to counseling with you for 6 months. And of course, I'll go to counseling, And so I get these guys that were just like, no spirituality, no nothing. They were like almost like feral animals, gangbangers and, and we would talk, we would have these group sessions, and I told them, look, if you guys stay out of trouble for 1 semester, I'll take you guys camping. And they're like, what? Like camping, like in tents? Yeah. None of them had ever been camping, and most of them had never been north of 54. They'd never been south of Rosarito. They'd never been east of El Cajon. Their world was like this. Mm-hmm. And so I told them, well, let's go. We're going to go. And, well, what kind of food are we going to eat? That's up to you. I'm just going to take you, but you guys have to. So my mom's going to make birria. My mom's going to make burritos de frijoles. My dad's going to make this. So they had everything, and they were just like so excited. And I said, see, this could be your life, And at that time, they were like, this is kind of scary because it's pitch black, right? I said, I'm going to tell you some stories, ghost stories from Mexico. No, don't tell us. But I think that the way I'd like to represent our traditions is that you don't have to wear things on your head or go around being cosmic. You can just be yourself and follow indigenous ways, because it's very natural, When you put all these things on, you become unnatural because you don't wear them all the time. You just wear them this is my special occasion shirt. Well, that's nice, but you're not going to special occasions all the time. So I think that the way we do it, to teach, you teach by the way you live, by the way you speak, and by the way you act. So when they see Dr. Mario Aguilar, PhD, Assistant Director, Early Academic Outreach, part-time faculty, San Diego State, and then they see me in my traje, aren't you embarrassed? This lady told me that. Aren't you embarrassed? I go, embarrassed about what? You're in your underwear with feathers on your head in the street. I said, well, obviously you must have liked it because you saw my underwear right away. Most people don't see it till the end. And so it's just daily life, just by doing it.
I'd like to chime in on that. I think one of the things we do in our dance circle is, we dance in a circle because that represents a cycle of life. And at the end of our dance, especially our practices, we sit in a circle and everybody gets to do a little blessing. We pass the smoke, and they can say a silent prayer. They can share some words. And so our children, they love to tell us about what's going on in their lives. So they tell us, oh, I got an award for this or that, or I'm going to try out for this play, or they tell us all these things that's going on in their lives. And we acknowledge it, and we validate it, and we encourage them to grow and to try new things. And so we always tell the people in our group, all of you are important, and all of you, we wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for you. because they always give us thanks, right? But it's like nothing would exist without you. But what's most important about what we do is our children, because they are the future. And so through our examples, through the work we do together, that's what I call the medicine of the danza. So a lot of people are attracted to the danza because of its spiritual aspects. And they think they're going to come in and see fireworks and see visions and, their life's going to be changed immediately. And that's not the medicine of the danza. The medicine of the danza is doing this discipline, working it for years, the creative piece of it, the dance, the music, all of that is part of the healing. But the interactions with others and talking about what's really important in our lives, what's important to leave as a legacy, not for us, but for our group and for our community. And I think those are the values that we instill on a weekly basis, especially with our children, because we tell them all the time, you are the future leaders.
Yeah. You brought a concha. Can you explain to us the role?
Sure.
It's over here on this side.
It's over here now. This is a very important part of the danza. It's the concha in Spanish, a conch shell in English. Gee, that's same. Atecocoli in Nahuatl, a from water, te from stone, cocoli because it's round inside. And so they would cut this like this and they would make a very beautiful conch shell necklace symbolizing Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. But when you cut off this end, you use those little twists inside to create a sound. And we use it for several things. Number one, most importantly, to call the spirits of our ancestors. And we call them from the 8 directions. And people say, 8 directions? What are you talking about? Well, we have east is the most important one because that's where the sun rises. We have west because that's where the sun sets. We have south because that's the land of life. It's the land of luxury, the land of beauty, because chocolate, jade, vanilla, cinnabar, different things come from the south. And the north is the land of the dead because that's where the cold winter winds, as you know right now, the cold winter winds, the snow, the ice. If you look in the desert, you'll find the bleached bones of animals. What color are they? They're white. So white is a color of death. And for us, it's kind of ironic. For us, black is a color of life. When people get married in the indigenous world in the old days, we wear black because fertile ground is black. That's why Egypt was called Kemi, which means the black land. That's in their language. Egypt, I don't know where that came from or what it means, but it's the black land because every year the Nile would bring in black, rich soil, and that's why the south is black, because it's richness, it's life. And the north is white because it's death. East and west, it's life and death of the sun. So that's 4 directions. That's the easy ones. The next ones, you have to think about them, but they're not that hard. Above us, Ilwika, the sky, that's one very important direction for us. Just like east and west, but in European concept, it doesn't rate anything. Underneath us, Mictlan, the land of the dead, that's 6, number 6, because that's where our ancestors are resting. The black earth lets us grow our corn and all our good stuff. And then we have Nikan, which is the center. This is the center of my universe. So whatever's happening in Palisades is tragic, but my center is right here. And thank God I'm okay. So that's an important site. So that's 7. Okay, so then the last one is, think of it as a big crystal ball all the way around us. That's Kawitl, which means time. Because for thousands of years we knew about time, but it wasn't until 1905 when Einstein made his theory of relativity and his theory of trying to get the grand unified theory, that time was brought in, and they know that the faster you go, the slower time is, and blah 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 blah. But we had that already. It's in the Mayan calendars. It's in all of our traditions. We had those 8 directions. So we have east, west, south, north, above us, below us, the center, and then everywhere around us. Because this spot in 1801 was a lot different than it is now. And so time has changed the spot. So that's how the relationship changes with time.
Can you demonstrate how you
Sure.
use the concha?
Of course, every time I try that to show, right? So I'll do a bad one for you. That's the person that doesn't know how to do it, and that's not good. So this is a good one, I hope. So you can change the sound by putting your hand in and out.
I have to tell you, I've seen you guys dance I don't know how many times, but I'm always fascinated with the sound that comes out.
Yeah,
It calls you. It calls you.
There's something about it. I can't pinpoint it, but I'm always like, look at
Well,
it.
I think because it calls the animas, it calls the spirits.
Spirits.
And we always believe when we dance, we're dancing with our pasados, antepasados, and our future descendants.
Oh.
We're
That are-
connecting that.
Our ancestors that were and our descendants that are not yet born are dancing with us in the circle.
Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think is really important for people to know?
I would say make sure you have enough paletas de limon after we dance, because everybody runs, paletero, you're supposed to run. You have your traje and you're supposed to be out there. I was like, paletas.
I'll share that. I think for me, getting involved with the danza, I had no clue that it was going to be a lifetime commitment.
Okay.
And there were times that I had a love-hate relationship with the danza because it was just it's so immense, and then it becomes incorporated in so many aspects of your life. But one of the most beautiful, I guess I'll say, unintended consequences of being involved in the danza is that through this movement, we have made friends with so many people throughout the world, really. And people are always so gracious about taking us into their homes. And as a result, we dance in New Mexico every year. We've been doing that for nearly 40 years now. And we dance with other Native American tribes from throughout the United States and Canada and Mexico. And we represent that Mexican, strength. And so it's beautiful when you come together in an intertribal way.
Mm-hmm.
And we've realized that we're related, to the Kumeyaay and to all the tribes in the region. And we've been adopted into some tribes. And they take those relationships very, very seriously. As city people, people come and go in your life all the time. But people who live out in rural areas, who live on reservations, when they are your friend, they're your friend for life. So that's been the most beautiful part of being involved with the danza, is all of the friends we've made, the compadres, comadres, the new fathers, we have to call them dad, and they have to call us their children. And all of that has been a really beautiful family experience of the danza.
If you could tell youth today anything that would inspire them, what would you say? And I want 2 different opinions, okay?
I would say be proud of who you are, be proud of where you come from, but also be proud of where you want to go. And education is the key to your future. But don't ever let anybody put you down or make you feel like you're not important. And whatever path you choose for your spiritual path, make sure you stay on it and don't change every 3 years. Like today I'm Buddhist, tomorrow I'll be blah, blah, blah. Because a lot of people do that. And that just shows that they're not complete. So be proud of who you are, proud of where you've come from, but be proud of where you want to go.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, my answer is going to be kind of similar because I do believe, and this is my second book that I put out, that identity is so critical. Mm-hmm. And defining your own identity is what will carry you through in this world. So in this book, this child is exploring the blue and the green of the two flags and trying to figure out azul o verde, cuál soy yo. In the end, the child comes up with a resilient solution. And he says he is aquamarine, blue and green, all mixed together. But he did it in his own way, right? And so I think that's the critical piece, especially if you're a person of color and you live in this country. You know, be proud of who you are, be proud of your heritage, but define that for yourself. Define where that takes you and how that carries you in this world that you walk. You know, my son is a professor at San Diego State. My daughter is an attorney with NBC Universal. She's a vice president now. But they still put on their feathers and they still dance barefoot and they sing the songs and they pray because they know who they are. And so know who you are and you can go anywhere you want.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you for having us.
No, this has been so informative. And like I said, you know, I've seen you dance and others dance, but I needed to know more. And you gave me some of that knowledge. Thank you.
And thank you. And thank you for your work.
You.
You're welcome.
So important.
It's fun. Thank you for taking the time to tune in to the We Made San Diego audio video podcast. Please subscribe. Visit our website, wemadesandiego.com, to learn more. My name is Maria E. Garcia. Adios. Thank you.